So I'm here with Nate Johnson. And Nate, you're a grain farmer, former livestock farmer.
Yep.
And father of a celebrity farmer.
Well, I'm Zach's dad. We'll go with that.
Yep.
So,
And we're doing a video. We're going to talk about farm history. We're going to talk about the Minnie Mo here. And you started farming with this. Was this the first tractor you bought?
this was the first tractor I bought. Yep. I actually grew up in southern Minnesota, and I moved up here and started farming in 1982. And I knew I was coming up here in 81. I bought this tractor down in southern Minnesota from a dealer in Mountain Lake.
Yep, the Alice Chalmers dealer, Mountain Lake.
Yep, I believe he was, yeah. Yep, and the tractor was about 10 years old at the time I bought it.
Yep, and it's the same tractor you said as the Oliver.
It's the same as an Oliver 1655.
And you were pretty partial to the 55 Olivers.
Yeah, I grew up, I liked the Olivers. When I grew up at the farm in southern Minnesota, they had some Minneapolis and Molines at first, and then they had some Massey's, and they had the Olivers. But yeah, I enjoyed driving the 55 series Olivers, 1955 and 2255. So. Yep. And that's kind of the reason why I bought this, because it's the same as a 1655 Oliver.
Yep. And this was going to be the planting tractor and the livestock tractor at the time was kind of the plan.
Yep. The first year I planted, I had an 8-row Cyclone planter. It was a mounted planter. I think it was 500 was the number of it. And we planted the crop with this tractor. The second year I actually bought a 1755 on an auction sale. But the first year we planted with this tractor, and we used it for different things over the years.
Yep. You had bandouls on it at one point for pulling that.
With the planter, it actually pulled it with single tires the first year. Yep. And then we had fed cattle, and I bought a set of bandouls that I put on it for packing the silage pile. And,
yep. Okay. Yeah. So then you put the loader on after you bought it.
Yep. I bought it without a loader, and then bought a used loader and put on there. And since then, we've traded the loader for a newer loader.
Yep.
40 years ago, we traded for a newer loader.
Right. But like I said, that Westendorf loader at the time, I don't think there was a faster quick attach. I don't know if anybody else was really a quick attach.
There maybe wasn't a quick attach loader at that time. It's not the easiest with the hoses where they're at and stuff, but you could take it off in 5 minutes.
Right,
You know, and if you had trouble hooking up the hoses, maybe 10 minutes.
Yeah.
Yeah, it came off really pretty nice.
And when you're a small farmer with not enough equipment, it was awful handy to be able to take it on and off.
Yeah, we'd take the loader off for planting, and then I would say 11 months out of the year, the loader stayed on there. We'd get done planting, and with the livestock, we'd put the loader back on. And
yep.
Actually, like 2, 3, 4 years after I started farming, we pulled the rock picker with it. And I would take the loader off for pulling the rock picker. I didn't like it bouncing out there in the front in the rough fields.
Yeah. Has she ever broke the front end?
We broke some tie rods on here.
Okay. Yep. But so the spindles and the tube are still?
They're still the original, yep.
Okay.
Yep, but you'd hit a rock or something and you'd bend the tie rods. So
yep.
We replaced the tie rod a few times. That's it.
Yeah, because you started out raising livestock and then corn and beans.
Yep. Yep.
But you were saying you guys would chop corn silage for the cattle.
Yeah. Yep. And we had a silo. We'd put wet corn in the silo. We'd blow that in there, and we'd make a pile for the silage.
So would you just put high moisture corn on top of the corn silage in the bunk?
Yeah, I'd mix them in. We had a mixing feed wagon.
Oh, okay.
So I'd kind of mix it in.
Almost like a TMR.
Yeah, yep. It was an Artsway, had a chain that went around in a loop, and you'd start that and let that run while you're loading it, and it would mix everything pretty good. And that chain was actually the same chain that would unload the feed wagon.
Okay.
You'd open a gate and it'd shove it into there. Nogger would take it out, and I had fence line bunk here, and they were pretty nice.
So did you put that 1755 on that wagon then, because you were using this to load the silage?
No, actually, I had a 2-1-35. We'd put that on there. I think for the first year, I'd actually unhook this and then mix it, hook it back up, and yeah, that got to be a long winter doing that.
Right, but this always started because it would start.
Yep, we didn't have a heated shop.
right?
And we would plug it in when it was below zero. But
Yeah.
it's always started pretty nice.
And you were saying that to chop the corn silage, you had a Fox chopper.
Yeah, yep. I had this tractor and a 2 and 35 I bought both the year before we moved up here. And
Yep.
we had a Fox. It was a 3,000 pull type chopper. It had a ton of acres on it when I got it, but it still worked pretty good.
Did that have manual controls or did that have?
That had a electric controls.
Oh, it did.
Hydraulic and electric. So I had a switch for the spout in the cab and the
Right.
hydraulic lever for moving the spout. And we drove alongside. We had a couple single axle trucks, so we drive alongside the chopper with the trucks.
Okay. Yep. That's fun. Corn silage is one of my only things I miss about milking cows.
Yeah.
I
always enjoyed chopping, yeah, making silage. You aren't quite as rushed as you are with corn and soybean harvest. And it is first started to harvest, and it smells good. It's just fun working around that.
Yeah, it smells good, and then it's cool in the morning when you start,
Yeah. Yep.
and then in the afternoon you're out in a t-shirt again. It's kind of
Yep, perfect weather and
Right.
nice time of the year for that.
It is. That was a good time, but yeah, you gradually transitioned away from the livestock as time went on, and
Well, yeah, actually in '87 we kind of decided to quit livestock. So I had an auction and sold the livestock equipment that I had, and then at the same time we built a bin and put up a corn dryer.
okay, and well, we had a clip that the audio just wasn't quite right, so we're kind of rehashing just a little bit of this. But you started in fall of '81, basically is when you started the
Yep,
till.
I grew up in southern Minnesota.
Yep.
So my grandfather had the farm here. So in '82, I started talking to my grandfather probably in 1980, and decided in '82 I'd come up here and farm.
Yep.
I farmed with my stepdad and his brother in southern Minnesota before that. But then the fall of '81, I came up here and did the fall tillage on my grandfather's land, this farm and some land close to here.
Did you own the
So-
tractor already at that point? Or did you bring?
I did own it. I had the 2 and 35 that I brought up here. It actually stayed down at Jackson, I think, until spring
Okay.
when I brought it up here. But the 2 and 35 came and did the fall tillage.
Okay. You had an IH moldboard plow,
Yeah, yep.
720
The
or
720, yep.
was that a
Yep, and we had a lot of rocks, so we did a lot of repairs.
was that like a 616, 618s or
I believe we had 518s.
okay? So
And then we went to variable width, so we were 520s after
Oh.
that. So I believe the number of that might have been a 735 plow.
right, yeah, they had that black stripe on them and a very
Yep,
width.
and the very width, yep.
Yeah, they were a cool plow, and we talked about earlier in that other clip that moldboard plowing is fun for just a little while, and then it gets old.
Yep, I enjoyed it a lot more in southern Minnesota down at Jackson, where they
Right.
didn't have as many rocks. So
Yeah,
I didn't mind the plowing, I didn't like the repairs.
right.
And the plowing, it got to be long hours, so.
It does, yeah. Yep, and yeah, it was a whole different world farming up here than down there. As far as even that was one thing. So, who did you go for advice for even hybrid selections? Because if you were used to talking to your stepdad down there, if he tells you we'll plant this number, that isn't gonna be
He was actually a DeKalb dealer at the time. I believe it was Trojan, and then it went to DeKalb.
okay.
But yeah, we talked to the DSMs and the reps, and so I still got my seed corn from them, and it just delivered up here.
Really?
Yeah, but we some of the earliest varieties that we'd grow down here was probably the latest variety I would grow up here.
Right.
So it was, yeah, probably a little learning experience on the seed corn, but it really went pretty good. I do remember we had one variety of beans that were pretty late. Some of the neighbors were giving me a bad time about it, wondering if it was be ripe that fall, and they did make it, and they actually yielded really good, but I think I pushed the bean variety on one of the varieties a little too far that year.
Well, as a young guy, though, you're gonna do that.
So it worked out pretty good.
Yeah. But you go to start farming, and this was quite a bit of ground for the time, wasn't it? like
the
the operation up here?
father owned 640 acres here, so
Yeah.
about 550 tillable, and I rented that from him.
And that was a good sized farm.
It was,
Then.
yeah, yep. There were some the guys were getting bigger. The articulate tractors, 4-wheel drives were starting to get popular, so there were some of the guys were farming more acres at that time. That's kind of when you started to see the expansion. I suppose in the 70s when farming was good.
Well, yeah, because 72, the Great Russian Grain Robbery happened, and then that kind of caused a boom in, crop prices overnight, shot up.
Yep.
And
Yeah, they did. 70s were really good.
yeah,
And then I moved up here in 82, and we'd had a couple bad years, or farmers had. And 82 was actually pretty good, and 83 was decent for me too. So then I bought another farm and spent some money in 84, and then things really kind of fell apart. And 85 and 6 and 87 were pretty bad.
yep. But the drought year in 88 fixed a lot of problems because it got rid of carryouts.
It did. There were huge carryouts, and I believe 84, 5, 6 maybe.
One of those years in there, I think we had 100% carryout in wheat or something. Like there was literally 100% carryout.
Okay, that could be, and I didn't pay much attention to wheat, and I can't remember
Yeah.
how much it was in corn, but I'm thinking it was 4 billion bushel carryover in corn, maybe a little over that, and I'm guessing at that time, probably 8 billion bushel was how much we grow in the U.S.
Right. And then 83 was the pick year.
Yeah, yep.
So, which was good to have cattle because you could raise
Yeah, yep.
feed. You just couldn't harvest, grain.
Yeah, yep. And the pick year was okay, but I remember this was after the 80s got over. Then we had 92 and 93 were extremely wet.
Yeah.
And we had 092 program where a lot of our neighbors dished down their crops.
Right.
And I decided not to. I didn't want to do that, but we ended up selling a bunch of it to a guy putting it in the silos. The corn was so wet, we had trouble plugging up the sieves. So we ended up taking the sieves out, speeding the rotor up and taking the cobs with it as much as we could.
Yep.
And then he was blowing it in the silo.
Okay.
The crop was pretty short, and he didn't have enough for his feed. And ours was pretty bad for grain, so I sold it to him. I harvested it, and he'd haul it home and blow it in the silo.
Yep. Cob mill.
Yep.
Yeah. Was it ground up enough, or did he have a roller mill too that he was running it through?
I don't think he had a roller mill. He just
You just did it with
it
the
was
combine?
wet enough, and yeah, there were probably enough fines, and it worked out pretty good.
Yeah. Huh. Yeah, those were some interesting. But the 90s, would you say the 90s were one of the better decades for farming? Like things kind of
92 and 3 with the wet,
Yeah.
cold years were tough, but then after that, I would say 94 through probably 2005, 6, 7 it was just a nice, steady, gradual incline. With
Yeah.
profitable years, we weren't making too much. The prices or the cost of everything wasn't going crazy.
Yep.
And it was just, it worked pretty good then when we got into really 2007, 8, and the prices went crazy. And that was good, profitable years that also drove the price of all your inputs up, machinery and
Right.
fertilizer. I believe in 2012 or so, some of the fertilizer was $1,000 a ton.
Yeah. I
It took
remember
a while for it to come down.
I remember the agronomist saying, like, you better get some booked or you just won't be able to get it.
Yeah.
You know? And anytime you start hearing things like that, you know,
Yep. In the same way with equipment, I think it was probably 2011 or 12. I was going to buy a tractor, and they had new tractors sold, but then they had to sell the guy's trade-in, which was what I was buying. So I didn't know when I'd get my tractor because I had to wait for the guy getting the new tractor for that tractor to come in.
Yeah.
And then I was going to get mine. So you couldn't buy machinery then. It was a long waiting list. And the same thing happened right after COVID too.
Yeah.
Now it's kind of turning around where it's not hard to buy a tractor.
No, I think if you went to the dealer today and said you wanted to buy a tractor, they'd be pretty happy.
You could
to
come
see
home
it.
with a tractor, yeah.
Yeah.
Yep.
But you had to go. You moved this operation up there, and so how old were you at the time?
I was 22 the first fall when I came up here and was doing the tillage. 23 when we moved here.
So you had to go to find a bank because that inputs were cheaper back then, but it was still 550 acres of crops and a line of machinery was a significant investment.
It It was, and I was able to work with a banker here in Lowry. It was a smaller rural bank, and it worked real good. So my grandfather and grandmother lived here
Yep.
already, so they knew the community, and so I knew some of the people when I moved up here, but not a lot. But we had some great neighbors of the same interest as me when we moved up here.
Yep.
You know, we rode snowmobile a lot in the summer. I played ball with them, and
Yeah.
so he hated to move to a different community where he figured he didn't know anybody, but it worked really good for us.
Well, and I'd be willing to bet versus down there was more opportunity here than there was there.
For farming, there was more
Yeah.
opportunity to get into it.
Yep.
And there were actually 2 or 3 other guys that I know that kind of moved up here about the same time or maybe a year or two ahead of me from different areas, just because the cost of land was cheaper up here
Yep.
than it was in southern Minnesota.
Yeah. And access to markets probably wasn't as good as it was down there. I mean, obviously basis is worse here than it is down there. But as the years went on, that worked out pretty well.
The basis has definitely gotten better here.
Yeah.
It's still better in southern Minnesota, but we've caught up a lot, you know, with the ethanol plants and processing
Yeah.
plants and rails, everything. We've caught up pretty good on the basis.
Yep. And you got, you know, and then we talked about, you know, getting a semi, and that gave you access to a lot more markets.
It did, yeah. You go up further north, and there wasn't a lot of corn growing, but they needed the feed up there. So there were 2 or 3 or 4 maybe winters that I spent a lot of time in the semi hauling corn
Yeah.
up north, go 70, 80 miles north of here, and to
That-
feed mills or turkeys or.
With that GMC General, was it a Detroit powered General, or did it have a Cummins?
It had a Cummins.
Okay.
Yep. I think I bought it in 92 and it was an 84 truck. So in 92 and 3, we had poor quality corn.
Yep.
But I was able to kind of blend some of it off, and they were able to buy the corn up there, a little lighter test weight for feed. It looked like good quality, it was just light test weight.
Yep.
And so I'd show them the quality or what we had for corn, and they were happy with it. So
Yeah.
we were able to haul a bunch of it up there to different places.
Was that a factory day cab truck, or did it have a bunk on it?
Nope, it didn't have a bunk, just
Okay.
a day cab. Yep.
Because that's one thing I've noticed, like with your guys' trucks on the farm in the videos, is that you still got a pair of Kenworths that got bunks on them.
Yeah,
And, well, actually, I guess all 3 of your semis got a bunk, right?
they do. Yeah.
Because,
Yep. We had a W900 that didn't,
okay,
but I guess we haven't spent the money to convert them over to day cabs, and it's cheaper to buy them with the sleepers on.
yeah, well, that's why I always laugh with, when I was a kid growing up, most of the farmers had old cab overs. They were just old over-the-road trucks, and then you'd haul grain with them.
Yeah.
And in the
Yep.
last, 15 years or 12 years, something like that, it seems like farmers have gotten to where they buy brand new day cabs, and that just never happened when, because
Yeah.
I remember when I was 19, I started working for a guy that farmed and had a trucking company, and when we'd haul his grain over, we'd grab these newer over-the-road trucks that were all pinstriped up and looking nice, and we'd haul his grain with that. And all the farmers had these old cab overs that were just whatever, and now you go in the grain lines, the professional grain haulers got the old trucks, and the farmers are the ones that got brand new iron. So it's kind of nice to see old over-the-road trucks getting used instead of,
Yeah, there's some pretty nice farm trucks, but there's a lot of old over-the-road trucks
Yeah.
around here.
Yeah.
That's probably what the majority of farmers have. There's a lot of T800s, a lot of red T800s
Yeah.
and white T800s.
Yep.
I think there's some big companies trading them fairly often, and
Yeah. Yep. But I when I think of farm trucks, I think of International Transtars and GMC Astros.
yeah, that GMC General we had, that wasn't the nicest truck, but it worked pretty good.
Yeah.
We used it for quite a few years.
Yep. Well, and some of them had aluminum cabs, so I think they
Yeah,
were.
this one had aluminum cab.
Yep. So was the tear weight on it fairly low?
It wasn't bad. We had a steel 30-foot jet trailer,
Okay.
and that was heavy, and it got pretty rusty after a few years. And
Yeah.
I was using it all winter, so steel trailer is not the way to go.
No, they're not. And a 30-footer, do you ever get a hard time about bridging that? They ever?
Yeah, we had lighter test weight corn, but I know I got stopped one time and I had the truck full from front to back. The DOT was stopping everybody, and I said, I really don't think I'm overweight, and they said, as full as it is, you got to be. I said, well, I'm just going up here a few blocks. It was to a feed mill. I said, can we go up there and weigh it? And if I'm overweight, then we'll go on your scales. No, we're pretty sure you're overweight, so you got to go on our scales. So I spent 45 minutes with them, and then I did get a warning because I was a few hundred pounds overweight, but there was snow on it, so they thought I was okay. So we had to really fill a 30-foot trailer pretty full to get it to where we were overweight.
Yep. Yeah, and hopper bottoms weren't super common for a long time. A lot of the grain haulers were using flat floors because a lot of elevators had hoists and.
Yeah. This time there were a lot of hoppers, a fair amount around here.
Yep.
So.
Yeah, now there is.
Yeah.
But yeah.
Yep.
But it seems like back in the day, there weren't as many hoppers as there were, straight trucks, and then, a lot of guys that have a tandem, a twin screw, and.
Yep. There are a lot of straight trucks, and that's what we started with, a couple single axle straight trucks. But then it was cheaper to go to a 30-foot hopper trailer than to stretch out a truck to go to a tandem that would haul 500 bushels. So we could haul 700, and it was cheaper to buy that than a tandem.
Right.
You'd stretch it and put a hoist on it.
Yep. But around us, one professional grain hauler always had he had a Brigadier with a con aluminum box on it and a twin screw and a big Detroit. And a lot of that was because if he was hauling grain, it was a dairy farm that had a little extra grain.
Okay.
And the yard wasn't set up for, getting a semi in and,
Yeah, before I bought the 30-foot trailer, I thought maybe going with a tandem and a pup.
Yep.
But then you could unhook the pup in the fall. And that would have worked good for hauling a distance probably, or would have worked okay, but 30-foot was just a lot handier.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. And semis are a lot simpler when it comes right down to it.
Yep. Yeah, they're pretty efficient.
Yep. So what were you doing for a combine back then?
Well, I'd actually gotten a combine from the dealership down in Nestorville from my dad or stepdad's, his brother's implements business. And that was kind of in the 80s too. They were really struggling to sell combines. I believe maybe in 1981, they sold like 15 or 16 combines, and they could have sold another 5 or 6 if they could have gotten them.
Yep.
So then the next year they ordered like 17 combines, and that's when the farm economy turned around and they sold 2.
Ooh.
So then Massey Ferguson actually had pretty good deals for the farmers, or for the dealers to pick up the combines. So we got one of those. So I ran a Massey combine for 2 or 3 years, and then we ended up selling that, and the payments were too high priced in the 80s.
Yep.
So they went back, and then I bought a 6620 that was a few years old. It's the John Deere combine. That would have probably been in 87, I'm guessing.
Okay, so that Massey, was that like a 850, 860?
850, yep.
Okay.
Yep.
So a 6620, was that a yellow top?
It was yellow top, yep. And then I had that for 2 or 3 years, and then traded it for a used 7720. It was yellow top.
Okay.
Then we went to a green top, 7720. Yeah.
Yep.
Thought we really were going good then.
Oh, yeah.
And actually, all along, that 6620 was probably one of my more favorite combines when we bought that. Now they seem pretty small. At that time, it had duals on.
Right.
It seemed pretty good size. We had a 6-row head on it.
643 head and a
Yeah.
218, 216 platform or 220?
I think we had a 220 on there right away.
Okay.
Yep, had a 20-foot head. It had an 8-row planter and 20-foot head.
And dial-o-matic.
Yep, the dial-o-matic.
Yeah, that was.
Yep, and then you get mud, and the end of the sickle would plow into the mud. And
Right.
Yep. Yeah, they've really improved the heads a lot since then.
Oh. Yeah. I had a 220 I used to fight with all the time.
And they work good, but man, you'd fight the mud and fight different things with it. Now the heads you drive so much faster. Sickle's cut so much better.
Right. Yeah. So how long was so obviously at some point you got rid of that 2 on 35.
Actually, I got a second one in '84,
Okay.
and they had two for a while.
Were they both the early ones, the gray stripe or
Nope,
whatever?
in '84 they had the red stripe.
Oh, so you got a
was-
new one.
Yeah, yep, I got a new one. Worked with the dealership up here.
Okay.
So, and we had that for actually quite a few years. And then traded that off for a versatile 856.
Oh, okay. Was that a red or a
That was a red
blue
one yet.
Okay.
Yep. And then we kept that for a while and then went to blue 946.
Okay.
And then, you know, I don't remember all the years, but then we went to the John Deere 9200. And since then we've been with everything with John Deere. I was kind of friends with the guy that had the implement business, the John Deere dealership in Glenwood.
Okay.
So I started working with him on everything, and we've been with them ever since. So I would say probably 30 years now.
Okay. So in that, yeah, so four-wheel drives were, you had versatile four-wheel drives till you got to 9200 would have been what, they came out in what, 97-ish, 98?
Is that when they came out? And I got it, it was probably 3 years old when I got it.
Okay, so this is like early 2000s maybe
Yeah.
when you're,
Yeah. Typically
Okay.
what I'd done with most of the equipment, I'll buy something that was 2 or 3 years old and then run it for about the time you get the payments made on it, then you time to trade it in and get more payments. So
yeah.
typically buy equipment that was 2 to 3 years old. The only new tractor I bought was that '84 white, 235, and that's kind of when the farm economy crashed, and I haven't bought a new one since then.
Right. So then originally this was the planting tractor.
Yep.
And then, so when you bought the second, 2 and 3, did one of those plant?
Then the other one, yeah, yep.
So you went to an 8-row planter.
Actually, I think I went to a 12-row planter probably. Bought a little land in '84, and then I went to a new white 12-row planter.
Okay.
It's $10,500, I believe, is what I paid for that planter. I don't remember if it was $10,500 to boot or is $10,500 and take off the price of the 8-row Cyclone that I traded in. A mounted 8-row Cyclone.
You were pulling an
International
8-row cyclo with this?
It was mounted and it didn't have any fertilizer, insecticide, or anything. Just had the 12-bushel hopper in the middle
Yep.
and then row units. It was plenty of work for this.
Oh, yeah. Because I bet, because you were running PTO for the air, right?
Yeah, yep, it was running
So-
PTO.
So she was probably, you were running PTO speed all day.
Yep.
Playing with it.
Out in the open in the dust and
I bet if you stopped for lunch, you fueled again, right?
yeah, yep, probably brought it home and fueled it and had lunch all at the same time, yep.
Right? So she pulled, wow, an 800. So an 800 was your first planter then?
I believe it was a 500.
Well,
I
they had
think-
a 400 first.
The
Right.
400 I think was pull type and the 500 was the same as a
Oh,
400,
okay.
just mounted.
Mounted.
So it was on a 3-point. And
Okay.
so it probably pulled easier than a pull type.
Yep.
And it was bare bone planter, so it wasn't that heavy. But then we put
They had
that.
caster wheels on them too, or lift assist on there, didn't it?
No, that one didn't.
Oh, really?
No, it was light enough. It didn't have lift assist on it.
I'm afraid you didn't leave the loader on and fill her up with rocks.
You know, I think we left the loader on just for the weight in the front. So,
Right.
yeah, we worked the tractor for the first couple of years we had it.
Yeah.
Then we went to a 1755 tractor to pull a planter,
Okay.
and that handled
Yep.
it a lot nicer. That had weights on the front and
Yep.
a decent cab.
Yeah. And then then you ended up going to the white. So after the white, then so you're getting those versatiles. What were you planting with along in there?
Well, pretty much stayed with white planters until the mid '80s when I switched to John Deere. But we had a couple 12 rows, and then we went to a couple 16-row white planters.
Okay.
And then again, the same thing. The planters I would buy new.
Yep.
Probably keep them 5-6 years and trade for another new one.
Like then you went to like 7200 Deeres, like with the vacuum.
I think it would have been a little newer than that when we switched to the Deeres. We went to 16-row. And actually, we were trading every year then. As friends with the dealer, and
Oh,
it worked
okay.
out pretty good. I asked him, I believe we were paying $6,500 a year to boot, to trade planters.
Okay.
And he said the way it worked good for him is we would order it on the early order right after we'd get done planting, we'd order another one. And then he said John Deere would usually have price hikes, and there were guys that hadn't ordered them and then would want to trade planters in the winter or late fall. And and the price had gone up, so he was able to move the used ones pretty good. So he had several of us rolling new planters every year, and he came out pretty decent on it. And at that price now, it costs twice that much to take your planter in to get the checkup for the year,
Right.
than what it costs to trade for new every year.
Yeah. What were you pulling those with then? Not still the white?
No, not the white 16-year-old planters. We pulled the white 2 and 35. Yep. And then for a couple of years, I rented, I believe it was an 8930 Case IH.
Oh, yep.
And had that. I think it was a 3-year lease deal on that, and then went to an 8100 John Deere.
Okay.
So, and then it's been all John Deere since the 8100.
Boy, when that 8100 came, that was something else,
That
right?
was nice. That was almost as big a step as when you went like the 4430 or the 1955 Olivers with the air conditioning and the stereos.
Right.
It was almost another step up like that.
They really were. They could do so much.
Yep.
You know.
Yep. They were. That was a very nice tractor.
I always said that tractor today that design is kind of what everything today is based off of.
It really is, yeah. The tractors aren't that much different than once they went to that design.
Yep. So that was that late 90s then, probably?
Probably, yeah. Yep.
It was like 95 model year was the first year of them, so.
Okay. Yeah, and actually that one I think was new, and I leased it for 3 years.
Okay.
And they had some pretty good lease programs for a few years there.
Okay.
And then kind of started buying them after that.
So then did you keep that? Did you buy that one out?
No, we actually rolled that one for an 8210.
Okay. Yep.
So, and then went to the 8230 and then an 8260.
Okay.
For the main bigger tractors.
Yep. And same damn tractor, but the R cab is a little nicer.
Yep, they kept getting a little nicer.
Yeah.
And the monitors and GPSs, they still keep getting a little nicer.
Everything does, you know. But along there, farming kind of changed on the farm side too. You got away from the livestock in there, which...
Yeah, I sold the livestock in 87.
Okay. Even the pigs?
Yeah. Yep. We quit cattle, and then I had hogs for about another year, and then got out of the hog business too. I never really enjoyed the hogs. And then when I was younger and started with the hogs, we were making pretty good money on hogs, and they always called them the mortgage lifter.
Right.
And they were good money, and then, man, it got to be you needed so many hogs to compete, and I wasn't about to put up a big confinement building and spend the money on that. So I kind of just quit the hogs, and I had an opportunity to rent some more land. So.
Was that farrow to finish?
No, I just finished.
You just bought feeder pigs?
Yeah.
Okay.
I did farrow in Jackson before I moved here in southern Minnesota.
Yeah.
For a few years, and that takes a lot of time. That's kind of like milking cows. So.
Yeah, you're there a lot.
Yep.
And, a lot more handling and risk. There's a lot more risk involved, it seems like, with,
Yeah, and to me, the cattle that was a lot of money, a lot of dollars. So there's always risk there. I enjoyed the cattle, but I didn't like borrowing all that money, especially at 18% interest. But that was one thing when you do your cash flows, you'd always figure out the interest.
Yeah.
And I think that was one thing when Zach first started farming. I always kept talking about figuring the interest. You got to figure that. Well, 3% interest, it's a lot easier to kind of forget about the interest. Now it's coming back where you've got to really pay attention to your interest cost too.
Well, you probably don't have to tax plan as much then, though, because you've always got that interest deduction.
That's right. There wasn't much tax planning in the early mid-'80s.
Well, and there's something to be said about that. That is a significant deduction that, as a young farmer that kind of helped.
Yeah, and as a young farmer, a lot of times you really don't need to worry about the income taxes as much because hopefully you're expanding and you're buying equipment, and there's always enough expenses. Once you start slowing down is when the income taxes will hit you. Right.
So, did you have much into the livestock facilities? Did you build a lot of?
No, I really didn't build a lot of livestock facilities. Right where we're sitting now, there was a cattle barn here when we moved up here. They used to have a wooden barn here, and lightning had hit that in 1972, and it burnt down. So there was a pretty nice open-sided cattle shed here.
Okay.
And I fed hogs in that building too, kind of converted it over.
Yep.
But yeah, I really didn't spend any money on livestock facilities. And I had the livestock equipment, a fair amount of it, that I moved up here from southern Minnesota.
Okay.
Manure spreaders, feed wagons, and a lot of the equipment I needed for the livestock, for the cattle.
Did you, because sometimes with steers, I know people put a little bit of hay in there for them, for their rumen or something. Did you make a little hay ever? Or?
No, I never did. I did buy some hay,
Okay.
but I never really planted any hay. Didn't have any hay equipment, really.
Okay. So you get out of the livestock, and then you're just strictly cash grain.
Yep, been pretty much corn and soybeans since then. I used to grow seed beans for quite a few years, but pretty much just cash grain now.
So when did you get a dryer? Like right away when you?
It would have probably been in '87 when we sold out of the livestock equipment.
Okay.
'Cause then we quit blowing the corn into the silo.
Yep.
So that would have been the first year we built a bin and put up a dryer then.
Okay. What was your first dryer?
It was a Farm Fans 270.
Okay. Yep. Was that continuous flow or is that automatic batch?
That was a continuous flow. You could run it either way,
Okay.
but we always ran it as continuous flow.
Yeah. Did that use an auger then?
Yeah, we
Geared down
augered it.
auger instead of a
Yeah,
air
so we had an
system.
auger geared down, going slow, augering it up to the bin all the time.
Okay.
too.
Yep. I still do that. I got a Super B with
Okay, yeah,
I have
it
a big auger geared down.
worked pretty good, yeah.
It does. Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. Dryer was huge. When you moved up here, were there still cribs on this farm or anything? Did they ever pick anything?
Yeah, there actually was a corn crib. I don't think it had been used for quite a few years, but we put steel on the outside of it and gutted the inside and used it for a shed.
Okay.
So we left it there and used it for quite a few years. And that's
Okay.
where we took it down when we built that bin in '87,
Okay.
because that's kind of where the drying setup sits now.
How many bushel was that first bin?
It's 20,000 bushel bin,
Okay.
33-foot bin, and it's still there. We've added rings to it now,
Okay.
but it's still there.
That was a big bin when you built it, I bet.
It was actually.
Yeah.
You're filling it with a 300 bushel truck or wagon.
Right? Were you still using gravity boxes some too, or?
We had a couple trucks, single
Okay.
axle grain trucks that we used.
Yep.
I had one gravity wagon and 2 trucks.
Okay. When did you get a semi?
I actually think it was '92 when I got a semi. It was 1984 truck. We had some poor quality lighter corn. And I actually spent a lot of the winter in that truck, found some good markets up north, some feed markets, and so I ended up hauling a lot of corn up there, and I actually hauled corn for some of the neighbors a few times. But I'd spent a lot of the winter hauling the corn up to different places. There's a lot of turkey market, and
Yep.
it was feed market back then. Now with the ethanol plants, it's a little bit different.
Yeah.
And plus in northern Minnesota, there wasn't as much corn. Now they've cleared some ground and irrigated it, and there's a lot more corn up there.
Yeah. What was that first semi?
It was an '84 GMC General. And then I
Okay.
pulled a 30-foot jet steel trailer with it.
Okay. Yep. That that helped to have your ability to find a different market than just haul to the elevator.
It did, yeah. Yep, helped a lot with dockage. Plus, it paid better and it was something to do in the winters.
Well, and then soybean wise, I bet you could that made a big difference with beans, because could you go to Mankato or?
Well, we could have, but I didn't have enough storage for beans, so we just took the beans all in the fall to the elevator.
Well, you need cash flow. Mm-hmm.
Yep, you need
money.
Money, yep.
That's-
Hopefully it'd pay off the operating note, or sell the soybeans, take a CCC loan out on the corn, and hopefully pay off the operating loan for a couple months.
Yeah, because the beans, for the most part, the basis on beans, there wasn't a lot of carry in beans over the years. It really didn't pay to store.
No, there really hasn't been a lot of carry in beans most years.
Yep.
But now, when we put them in the bin now, and a lot of times we can haul them down to the river market, and we'll gain on basis quite a bit. And if there's little carry in the basis, plus a lot of times it seems like in the fall year you'll start combining a few mornings and the beans are 14% moisture.
Yeah.
You put them in an aeration bin with some beans that are 12%. You save on the dockage quite a bit too. So
Right.
between saving on the dockage and better basis, it's paid pretty decent for us to store the beans till winter.
So you'll go all the way to the Minnesota River then with the beans now.
Yeah, a lot of times they'll go to Mankato or even Fairmont
Okay. Yep.
to be processed to meal. And we usually hire trucks because I think they can do it cheaper in weekend. They've got backhauls. They're going to bring meal up to this
Right.
area anyway.
Yep.
So it's kind of like the beans are their backhaul. They've got to go on they're mainly hauling meal.
Right.
But they need to get down there, so there's no point in going down empty.
Yeah. So your rotation really didn't change much because you were mostly corn and beans anyway, so you kind of stayed that rotation.
Yeah, my rotations really never changed. There was a couple of years I had barley one year, and I had a little wheat I think one year, and oats one year. It never seemed to pay very good compared to corn and soybeans. They're never cash flowed good.
Yeah. So but you've seen your whole neighborhood change the rotation, so it's pretty much all corn and beans now.
Yeah, yep. I think when I moved up here, some of the older farmers thought it was kind of crazy not having any small grain in the rotation. But I was kind of used to that from southern Minnesota. There was no small grain really down there at that time either.
Right. Yeah, that's a major change. So when you look back on your career, what are the things that kind of stand out as the big changes? I mean, like the ethanol boom has to be, right up there. Or Roundup Ready, or...
I remember the Roundup Ready. That was a big change, and then everything went to just spraying Roundup. It made it so much simpler.
Well, yeah, soybean.
Now with some of the
herbicide.
Roundup resistant weeds, it's gotten back to, it's a lot harder to spray, but for a few years it was really nice. A lot of people say how many changes we've seen, which we have, I guess, going from an open station to a cab to the technology. But then I think it changes like my grandfather saw. When he was a kid, there were thrashing bees.
Right.
And then he worked with horses, and then they went to a tractor. He had a 560 when he retired, similar to this probably. So I think they probably actually saw more changes then than we've seen. Ours are technology.
Yep.
Are the biggest changes.
Right.
So.
Yeah, I think my grandpa saw, like in his lifetime, he went from walking behind a team of horses when he was young to the first GPS systems were getting put on, the first yield monitor on a combine the year he died.
Okay, yep.
That's when that stuff was coming out. So that generation to have seen that much change.
Yeah, I remember when I went to the first yield monitor, I think it was DeKalb, the seed company, had a program. If you agreed to buy so much seed from them for 3 years, they would pay for, I don't remember if they paid for the whole yield monitor or half of it, but we put it on a 9600 John Deere combine. So that would have been probably right around 90 or so.
Oh, really?
We put it in there, yep.
Okay.
90. Well, the combine, I believe, was 90, so probably would have been 93 or 4 before we put it in there.
Okay.
'Cause I think I bought the combine when it was 2 years old, so I probably bought that in 92 or 3.
I was thinking 96 or 97 was when you could get a factory Green Star ready, the first
Was
greens.
it that late?
I think
It
so.
might have been.
Yeah.
Okay.
And maybe they had a yield monitor, but it wasn't GPS, mapping it.
It might, yeah. Yep. Yeah, we didn't map anything at first.
Right. So maybe it was just a yield monitor.
It might have been, yeah.
That's, and what a difference that made, now, because I always split the planter so you can see what one does against the other one.
Yep. And then when they first came with the GPS for steering the tractor, I think a lot of us kind of resisted that at first and thought we didn't really need it. But then I went to an auction sale where they had some stuff, it was a couple years old, and saw what that is. So it's when you're buying the equipment, you aren't throwing the money away. You still got something that you can use, because that sold really good on resale.
Yep.
Plus they talked about the fuel savings. Well, it's more than that. You're saving the hours on the tractor. You're saving the fuel. You're saving on the wear points and the tillage equipment even.
Right. Yeah. There used to be used to be thinking, dumb farmer, right? That's what people are. We're just a bunch of dumb farmers.
Yep.
And years ago, you could just work really hard and it'd be fine. That's all you had to do is just work hard.
Yep, and I think that was probably even before my time, probably.
Right.
Because you always heard that, just work hard and you're going to make it. But,
It's
in
not.
the 80s, you had to really manage, since the late 70s and going through the 80s, you had to manage a farm and you had to
Right.
run the business.
Absolutely.
And try and stay profitable.
Yeah, which is it's very important to know the numbers as much as it is to know how to do some of the day-to-day stuff.
It is, and I've always kind of enjoyed working with the cash flows and different scenarios, and I run a lot of numbers in the winter, spend a lot of time at my desk, so I think you probably can make more money at the desk than you can working outside on the farm.
Yeah, absolutely. Just think of marketing.
Yeah.
You do a good job of marketing versus a bad job of marketing.
Yep. Yeah, and the bin side has been really good for us. We've been able to collect the carry most years.
Yeah.
When there's an inverse in the market, it's usually a higher price, so those years take care of themselves.
Right.
When you get the cheaper prices and can collect the carry, it seems to work out pretty good.
Yeah, currently there's a pretty good carry in the market again.
There is, yeah.
And it's been a while since we saw that.
It has been, yep. But $6-7 corn, you don't need the carry.
Right.
You're okay selling it, and you don't have to worry about it.
Right.
But with $3.50 or $4 corn, it's pretty nice. We can put it in the bin and collect the carry on it.
Yeah. Yep. So yeah, after the old Minnie Mo here planted for a couple years, then it just primarily did loader work.
Yeah, when we had the cattle, it'd run twice a day, every day.
Okay.
We load all the feed with it in the feed wagon, haul all the manure.
Yep.
It got used quite a bit. Plus, then after that, we used it around the yard. It was the only loader tractor we had.
Yeah.
So I think it was only 6-7 years ago we got the first skid loader. And
Right.
once you get a skid loader, then the loader it's been retired now pretty much for 6-7 years. Except for a few times we get to pick up spilled corn or something.
What's kind of nice though about like a loader versus a skid loader. Now they got 2 speeds on skid loader, so it's not quite so bad.
Yeah.
But if you had a rock somewhere or a tree limb fell, you could just jump on the loader tractor and drive up the road and
Yeah, and we did run this on a rock picker for several years too.
Okay.
After it was done with the planting, and
Yep.
so we actually, there's so many rocks up here, we've always had a rock picker.
Okay.
So this pulled the rock picker for
Yep.
a few years too.
Where did the loader come from because you bought it without a loader on it?
Yep, I bought it without a loader in the implement dealership that my dad was part owner in.
They sold
we
West
got it
and
there.
North?
Yeah. Yep.
Okay. Yeah. And because that Ottawa, that's kind of northwestern Iowa there, ain't it?
I'm not real sure where it is. It's in Iowa.
Yeah, I was thinking it was.
It maybe is northwestern Iowa. And I don't even know if Westendorf is still in business.
Yeah.
I'm assuming they are.
Yep.
They had good products.
Well, like I said, that compared to the other loaders at the time, you could take that loader on and off.
And this
Way
is actually
easier.
the second loader we had on this tractor.
Really?
When I bought the tractor, I bought an older used loader for it. And then after we blew a couple hydraulic hoses after 3-4 years, then I traded loaders. And so
Okay.
it's the second Westendorf loader we've had on this tractor.
Yeah.
And actually, this loader was on the 2-135 weight for
Oh,
a
really?
while. Yep, I started using that
In the winter time
winter
for the
too.
cab.
Yeah, moving snow, and and that was really nice rig.
Oh,
Sit
yeah.
inside the cab. And
Yeah. But I suppose the thing nice with this is it always starts.
it does. It still always starts. We can have trouble with the other stuff, and you get on here and pull the choke and turn the key, and it starts up.
Has she ever been overhauled?
No, it hasn't. It probably doesn't have that many hours on it. The tack was broke when I bought it.
Really?
It just spins around, and I never bothered fixing it. So I really don't know how many hours on it, but it's not a high-hour tractor. We used it a bunch first 3-4 years of farming,
Yep.
and then it's been less and less since then.
Okay. Well, it's still pretty straight, and
At some point, we're probably going to paint it and and go through it and clean it up and use it more for, well, we don't really use it now, but I'd like to take the loader off and get it painted and just hang on to the tractor for probably as long as I live, probably.
Yeah, you get attached to them.
Yeah.
You know.
Yep.
Well, I mean, think about sitting on that tractor in 80, 82, 83, and you're just getting in farming on your own, and the thoughts going through your head when you're planting that crop, holding that steering wheel.
It was actually pretty fun and exciting to be up there doing it
Right.
yourself, and you didn't worry about the cold. You just worried about getting the work done
Right.
and getting it done in time. Once you'd get cold sometimes, especially at night, but you're more excited to get the crop in the ground and
Yeah.
see if you can do it.
Yeah, I bet probably had as much fun planting with that as you would with the the new one there.
Yeah, yep. Now
You
with
know.
all the technology is kind of, John Deere comes out and they get it started in the spring and he's used to it, so I let him go and it's kind of, I'm in the sprayer and it kind of works the same way there. I get used to the controls in the sprayer.
Yep.
This one's pretty easy to show somebody else the controls. Here's the throttle and
Right, right.
Yeah, it's a little different now. It takes a little longer to start stuff up, even to hook it up with all the wiring and
Oh yeah.
everything. It takes a while to hook it up.
Yep. Did you have to keep a bag with you to cover the monitor then on the fender? Did you have it mounted on the fender, or did you put it on the hood?
It was on the fender.
Okay.
And we were actually able to drive it inside every night.
Okay.
And if there was rain coming, for sure it sat inside.
Yep. But yeah, sit out there and look at those blinking lights while you're out on an open station tractor, and I mean, it was an upgrade. You think about that, you'd be excited when you'd have a tractor with halogens on it.
Oh, yeah.
And now
Yep.
you look at the lighting we got.
Yeah, it's crazy, the lighting now. It's really nice working at night now.
Yeah. Well, I always laugh. I remember as a kid throwing on them. You'd get them black plastic halogens from the dealer or something, and you'd bolt them on somewhere. I mean, those things, you could warm your hands up on them. They get so hot.
Yep. Yeah, they would get really hot.
Yeah, and I mean, just think of that. You had a light in each fender, and that's all you had
Yeah.
to
Yep.
plant, and then following your mark. That was tough at night, following your mark sometimes.
Yep. Yeah, I remember going by a planter, the first guy that actually had a GPS, and I was going by with a friend, and he looked out there, the guy wasn't running markers, and he looked at me and said, "Man, that guy can plant straighter than you without markers."
Yeah.
Then I had to fill him in and say, "Well, he's really not steering the tractor." What?
Yeah.
Yeah, and it was different when you start to drive a tractor the first time you hit that auto steer and you don't steer it. You want to grab the steering wheel all the time.
I have a tractor with autos. I still haven't activated it. I just haven't. And I should. I don't know. I'm almost just stubborn,
So, yeah, the auto steer makes it really nice. So you put in longer hours. And
Yeah. Yeah, that's what everybody says. And I know what you're getting at, like with planting, how excited you were planting with this tractor. And that's one of the reasons probably to hold on to it is you remember that moment.
Right, yeah. Yep.
And I can think of that being, in my 20s and working around the clock with, junk equipment. Just and you go around the clock, day and night on it. Now I got a 8225R would be my nice tractor, and there's nights where it's like it's 10:30, 11 o'clock, and you're like, well, I'm pretty tired, and
Yep.
back then you were sitting out on that Minnie Mo, and you're just getting started.
Yeah. Yep. Yeah. We used to have to put in more hours, I think. The equipment's gotten so nice. And you get a year like this, we had to put in the hours because every time we'd start, they're talking rain in 2 or 3 days, so we got to really push. But normally it's gotten pretty nice with the equipment. You don't have to push that hard. But
Well, and everybody, I think now, even with the, as far as harvest time even, everybody's got a good sized wet bin and a good sized dryer. And I mean, you can quit at a decent time, get some sleep, and start right away in the morning, where it used to be, the wet bin was small and you're, and
yep, for many years, come out at 2 or 3 in the morning and dump the trucks. You'd fill everything up at night. Wet bin would be full and the trucks were full. So you'd quit 10, 11 o'clock and then come out at 2 or 3 and dump the truck so the dryer could keep going all night.
Yeah, I had a neighbor that they probably had 500 acres of corn with 1 or 2 Toxowick dryers. You know, them old.
Oh, man.
And they would, he'd sleep on the kitchen floor and set an alarm, you know, for as long as the batch time is, and then they'd wake up and go switch it again all night long, you know, just all fall. And that was like 500 acres that way. You know?
Oh, yeah, that was a lot of trips outside at night. And
Yeah.
I think usually I'd go, last thing before you go to bed, you check the dryer, and then at midnight, and then at 2 in the morning, come out and dump the trucks, and then probably one more time before you get up at 6 in the morning. Then you'd come out and check the dryer before you'd eat breakfast.
Right. Yeah, so farming isn't physically, I don't think we have near the work we used to, you know, or even cleaning bins out now with power sweeps.
That's
so
why
much nicer.
farmers never retire.
Right.
You know, I used to come out and I'd throw 120 bags of beans on this trailer in the morning before I'd go plant. If you had a good day, you'd come back 3:30 or 4 and throw more bags on there. Now you got to go get batteries for the remote to run the seed tender. So.
Right. Yeah, I mean, when guys, you know, even grain farming back 60 years ago, when if you were raising corn, you were putting it in a crib and then shelling it back out later on. I mean, it was physical work.
Yep. And with the planter, when we were planting beans, every 3 rounds we'd have to fill. I got a field across the road is 3/4 mile long, so we could make 2 rounds, and then you'd get out and throw 18 bags of beans in there, and make 2 more rounds, and walk back and get the pickup and drive it up there and throw the beans in.
Yeah, and years ago, if you were in your 60s, I mean, you were shot. You were just plain worn out.
Yeah, and now it's gotten so nice to just. If I retire, I want to just get rid of the business side of it, and I still want to come out and run tractor in spring and fall.
Yeah. Yep. So that's it's good and bad, you know.
It is, yeah. Yep.
You know, I think it's led to the downside to it is that there's less guys that can farm.
Yeah.
You know, that's the tough part about it, but you know. But on the other hand, farms have always been getting bigger.
They have been. Yep.
You know.
Yep.
I mean, it's always been that way.
In the 80s, the bigger farms struggled first, I think. You know, you got more acres, you probably lose more money on more acres. Right. So, yeah, getting big to a point's good, but sometimes you see the guys with a ton of acres with a lot of debt, and I think the size of farms will keep expanding because of the equipment, but financially, I don't know if it makes much difference if you're farming 500 acres, 1,200 acres, or 30,000.
Right.
Sometimes I think 1,000-acre farms are more efficient than 30,000.
Well, I always said the best way to be is to get to a point where you have a bunch of paid-for ground. If you're just farming your paid-for ground, you'll make money.
Yep, that's right. Doing the work yourself, and on your ground,
Because rented, you know, for the most part, like, if you want to just start farming and go rent a bunch of ground and buy a bunch of equipment, you won't make money because it always comes down to whoever can do it the cheapest.
That's right. Yep. Have a couple of years of $7 corn and you're going to make a ton of money. Yep. But then on the downside, now you're paying high priced rent because everybody wants to rent it and farm it, and now you're going to lose that money back. Yep. You're going to give it back.
And so to have that, you know, to have some paid for ground and run enough acreage base, you know, that you can, because obviously you need X number of acres just to gross enough income.
Right, yep.
To even live.
Yep.
You know, but I don't know, this equipment thing, you know, really, when you think about this, so think of that, the difference when you went to that first Maximizer combine, like that 9600, right?
Yeah.
Versus the Titan combine you had before that.
Yeah.
So today, a 30-year-old combine would be a 9600 or 9500, right?
Yep.
Back then in 1994, a 30-year-old combine would have been like, what, a 55 John Deere or something?
Yeah.
And in 1994, there weren't many guys combining with 55s.
No, when I moved up here in 82, there weren't guys using those.
They were just...
15-year-old combine in 82, really wasn't efficient and nobody was running them.
Yeah. But today, if you had to, you could, go through a 9600, put the wear parts on it, and
Yep.
it'll do the work.
It'll work good. Yeah. Repairs
So-
cost a lot of money, but it'll do the work.
Yep. But equipment's gotten so much better, or think about a planter, a 20 years, 25 years ago, a planter versus the first planter you had. They're way further ahead.
Yep. To
You
me, I saw a big change from that cyclo that I had. Well, that was a big step up when they first introduced those cyclo planters. But then when I went to that white planter, 10,500, that was really a good planter. Did a really good job.
Yeah.
They were really accurate. And now the cost has gone up crazy.
Right.
Sometimes you wonder, the guy with that 20-year-old white planter, or a 20-year-old planter that's kept up is doing just as good a job, I almost think, as the newer ones. It's mostly weather,
Right.
but any planter that's 20 years old or newer is pretty good.
Well, I think that's where planters got big, was especially up here. So maybe not down in central Illinois or Indiana where it's quite as critical, but up here, there's only so much time to make grain. Mm-hmm. So the clock is ticking. As soon as the frost comes out of the ground, the clock starts ticking till the frost comes back in again. And the more time you give that crop to grow, the better.
Yep, you need to make use of the full season up here.
Yep.
And I think a lot of farmers that farm further south, they don't realize how critical it is. There can be fields that are only dry for 1 or 2 days in the spring.
Yeah.
If you got a late spring and it's the 10th or 15th of May before you get out there, and then you get rain after that, you got to get the crop in the ground up here. When you're in Minnesota, northern Iowa, it's critical too. But the further north you go,
Yeah.
I couldn't believe the changes from the weather when I moved here from southern Minnesota, from Jackson to move up here. The springs are so much tougher. The springs they're always 10, 15 degrees warmer than us in the spring. In the summer, it seems like we're the same temp or close.
Yep.
But in the spring when it's drying, it's quite an advantage the further south you go, I think.
Yeah, it can be, the next county north of us, the hybrids they'll plant, the maturity can be, 5 days difference in maturity. Just a county north of you, you're like.
Yeah, yep. And we see that probably in 30 miles south of us, seems like they're always going a few days ahead of us in the spring.
Right. So that's where the big planter, once we learn that, if it's not planted by X date, you're losing yield, that really made it for big planters
It did, yeah.
to come along.
Yep.
But other than that, I don't know, like, when everybody had livestock, there was kind of this, wow, it'll make feed. That was the thinking. But then once you went to just your grain, it's like, wow, there's a big difference in this yield if we don't get it in.
Yep, you've got to make your money on the grain. Cause
Right.
I can remember in the fall of the year, we'd quit tillage to haul manure for a day or two, because you got to get that done too.
Yeah.
And it's a lot nicer when you don't have to stop to do that. You don't have to shut down, and you don't have to shut down for chores without livestock.
Yep.
So it's gotten to be mainly either your livestock farmer or grain farmer now.
Yeah, it's going that way.
Yep.
And the investment and the overhead, even, when I got rid of my dairy cows, if I would have kept all my haying equipment and that kind of stuff around, say I wanted to have a few cattle, well, that's a lot of money tied up that you could be putting into better planter or harvesting stuff, or, because this equipment costs are gone up so much.
The cost and the upkeep on the equipment, it's kind of crazy. And I don't know if the repairs can ever come down. The used equipment gets cheaper, but
Yeah.
the repairs, I don't think they can.
Yeah. Think about these dealers. Back in the 80s, with $1 million worth of inventory on that lot was a lot of equipment.
Yeah.
And now that could be a combine and a head.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah. You trade in the next 9 and 2 heads,
Yeah.
you got $1 million tied up in one
One
thing
piece.
there. Yep.
Like it's crazy to think. So yeah, it almost leads to specialization.
It does, yep.
Just because, it's even if you want to dabble in, small grain or something versus, doing the row crop thing. Well, now we can't afford to have a better corn planter because we're going to have an air seed or two or something, and
Yep.
and so you're kind of, if you specialize, it allows you to utilize.
And that was probably one reason where a lot of neighbors had small grain and different rotation. When I moved up here, I didn't have the equipment didn't have a head for small grain and
Yep.
didn't have a drill. So it was easier to not have it. And plus when I did it, didn't really cash flow very good anyway.
Right. Well, there's a lot of stuff that it's, sometimes farmers will do something just because that's what you do. They've always done
Yes.
it.
Yep. Yep.
Like, you don't put a pencil to it because, well, that's what we do,
Yeah,
and you were, it doesn't seem like it's that far from where you were. It's all the same state, but it's very different.
It is
kind of
different.
farming.
Yeah. Yep.
In which when ethanol started, that it made this a lot more like that, I would guess.
I would say so. Yep.
But well, even like around home, I mean, just crossing the river, it was different farming on one side.
Yeah. Yep.
Because I've even noticed that over the years, like even when you drive from, in rural, like the 2 lanes from Minnesota into South Dakota, the farms change at the line, and you wouldn't think that there'd be any difference because they're right across the line from each other, but the farms are different.
The farms are different, yeah.
There's way more livestock, it seemed like, on the South Dakota side than there was.
In a way, it's similar to that, I would say, in southern Minnesota going into Iowa and northern Iowa.
Yep.
I think there's more livestock, a little different style of farms in Iowa.
Yeah, you just didn't see that as often.
Yeah.
That these big changes. So, and now we're, as we've seen livestock consolidate and go into more row crop, we're all kind of getting on this same level. Because even so there was a guy that we're someday going to do a video with. We're trying hard to get him on. But he jockeyed equipment, and he did very well jockeying equipment. He would go down to Illinois and bring equipment up. And he supplied dealers around the area with used equipment and stuff. And it seemed like the Illinois guys were always 20, 30 years ahead of where we were, technology-wise and what they were doing. And now it's almost like, maybe it's the internet? Because now we know what they're doing down there. So you're like, well, I'm going to do that here. Where before you're like, well, I don't know, this is the way we do things up here. And that technology, I think it's gone faster.
It probably has, yeah. Yep, because I think the equipment, I don't think there's much difference.
No.
Whether you're Illinois, Iowa, Nebraska, or up here.
Yeah.
I think it's pretty much all similar age and styles of equipment.
Yep. Well, because he always laughed. You'd get to he'd sell equipment up in, central northern Wisconsin, and he was buying planters out of Illinois, 4.0s, and when they were all going 6 or 8 and he said, they had, in the 7,000s were, when the 7,000 deer came out, I mean, they sold a lot of those planters. So those old shoe planters, the 1240s and stuff like that, were being traded off. Well, he was buying these shoe planters and bringing them home, and he had a load of planters, and somebody had a disc opener planter on that load, and he had told this guy up in northern Wisconsin he was going to bring him 4 planters, and he ended up this one. He goes, "Boy, I hope I didn't make a mistake, having that disc opener planter there. That this guy's never going to want another shoe planter again." And he cussed it out because they had too many rocks.
Oh, really?
Yeah. Okay. He said, "Don't bring me any more of them."
Well, and I think livestock probably had a play in that too. I think when the livestock goes away, the newer equipment comes in. And, if you got livestock and you've got to quit and have shorter days in the field, you're probably farming less land and paying more attention to livestock. So I think when we're all livestock's consolidating, so the grain farmers are too, and
Yeah.
we've gotten up to the same style of equipment,
Yep.
probably in the whole Midwest.
Yeah, because there would be, I mean, if you were selling, white tractors in, say, up here versus white tractors down there, you might not sell they maybe wouldn't sell a single 2 180 up here.
Yeah.
And then down there, they'd sell as many 2 180s as they could get.
Yep.
It's not like that, no.
And you can still kind of see that if you drive around the country. If you go out in South Dakota or probably Nebraska, different areas, you'll go by a dealership and there'll be a lot of balers and rakes and
Yeah.
a lot of livestock equipment. And then 100 miles later, it's no livestock equipment.
Yep. It just, guys went away from the livestock and a lot of that, the infrastructure came to sell cash grain.
Yeah. Yep.
Because at one point, being dairy up here, it was because there was no great market. So you're better off they built, a creamery or something. So then now you got a market for your product through the cows.
Yeah. Yep.
And now it seems like, the whole world is kind of open to everybody to do whatever if you really want,
Yep, that's right. Yeah, most of ours gets marketed through the ethanol plants now.
Yep.
Which the DDGs then go on for feed.
Yeah.
So
I've argued with livestock guys about that. They say, well, I hate ethanol because it's caused my feed costs to go up. And I would argue it's done the exact opposite.
yeah, yep, we haul a lot to Morris, and it's mostly local farmers hauling the wet cake and DDGs out of there.
Right.
And it's getting used locally. So
Yeah, a lot cheaper source of protein.
it is, yep.
And what's nice about the distillers was the protein level is low enough that it's not like you can't feed straight soybean meal.
Yeah.
But the
Yep.
DDGs work really good.
Yep.
And like I told this guy, I said, well, if you better be glad that there's ethanol, because then the crop farmer will just raise crops for the ethanol plant. Otherwise, maybe he's going to go buy steers and then.
Yeah. Yep, that's right. Yep. Yep.
So I think ethanol has been good for rural America.
Oh, it's been really good for rural
All the way
America.
around.
I think when you create the jobs and the trucking jobs and everything else.
Yeah.
And, yep. It brings the whole economy, brings money back into the economy.
I've never understood that why people bash ethanol and they'll say it's these farmers, getting their subsidies, this and that. Then the oil companies get subsidized.
I think part of that is the internet and social media.
Yeah.
And the oil companies are spending a lot of money advertising against ethanol.
Yeah.
And a lot of farmers don't realize, or not farmers realize it, but a lot of the general public doesn't realize, like we talked about DDGs and the oil you get from the ethanol plant. You're not just producing ethanol and the corn's gone. You're still 80 to 90% of the value of that corn still going for feed.
Right.
And still going for the same things that corn would be
Yep.
used for. So it's way more efficient than anybody thinks. And then on the other side of it, when you get the oil companies, you go to 84 octane, they refine it to 84 octane, blend the ethanol, and then they meet the 87 minimum requirements. So they're doing it for a reason. They're saving on refining costs by using the ethanol too.
Yeah, because when I remember when they started having 89 octane gas, like at Super America. So we had a Super America in town and a Cenex station, and this was back probably in the early 90s even. You started seeing some ethanol blends, and 89 octane. So it was the same price as the 87 octane. But you get the ethanol, and then you got the higher octane blend, and it was better gas.
It was, yeah.
And then the oil companies went smart, and they're just like, well, we'll just use junk gas and put ethanol with it and get our octane.
What a lot of consumers don't realize, the quality of gas, it's a gasoline they're mixing with the ethanol that's gone down.
Right.
And they're blaming that on ethanol.
Absolutely. Because, the 80, I remember a guy telling me his old square body Chevy, he got to take that 89 octane gas, and he said I could chirp the tires with that he couldn't do that with the 87 octane, it just wasn't as good a gas. And, and now they don't bash, they all just bash it. And like, why are we standing up for foreign oil production.
Yeah.
Don't you want
Yep.
this here in the U.S.?
Yeah, and I think it's because a lot of it's because of the oil companies that are in their advertising and spending $10 to one for the farmer. What
Yeah.
the farmer can do.
And maybe someday I hope the oil companies figure out that they probably are going to need ethanol because it's going to be us versus electric cars.
Yeah. Yep.
So
Yep.
you know,
Yeah. I don't know how the electric cars. There's definitely a place for them,
yeah,
but out here, especially if you've got livestock and it's 20 below zero, you need to run for parts. You got to get something done with livestock.
yeah,
And you got an electric car, electric pickup, and you got to run a couple hours away. How are you going to do that when it's 20 below zero? And I don't think lawmakers realize that it won't work in every situation.
yeah. The lawmakers are in the middle of a city where it seems like it'd be pretty easy to get around.
Yep.
Yeah,
They have no idea how to do it, but they're going to tell us how we should do it.
right. Because I would imagine if you've got an electric vehicle and it's a blizzard out, if you're going to be running your windshield wipers, your defroster, and four-wheel drive,
And your heat.
yeah, and your heat, that your battery life isn't going to be,
Yeah. Yep.
near what you'd need.
Right. Yeah. Yep. They'll tell you how far you can go, but that doesn't work in all the situations, especially 20 below zero, and
Yeah.
if you want to use the heat in your car.
Right. So, yeah, let's hope everybody kind of someday, comes together and agrees on this kind of stuff.
I sure hope so.
Plus the thing with the internal combustion is the independence of it. There's no, yes, you have a distribution system for fuel, but you and I can't store electricity here.
That's right. Yeah.
You know,
I think there's long ways to go on that too.
where you can store fuel and
There's no way I want to be traveling and stop for 45 minutes to charge battery.
no, absolutely not. So hopefully everybody will someday agree, but I don't know. It seems like we're getting more divided.
It almost seems like that right now. Yep.
Yeah, maybe it's just the internet.
So I think that makes everything worse.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yep. So I don't know, but yeah, there's been a lot of changes.
There sure has. Yep.
So yeah, but well, thanks for telling me about the Minnie Mo, because I always kind of wondered how it stuck around, no matter, and I figured it probably had something to do with the loader.
Yeah. and maybe we can paint it, and now you can get a before picture now and come back and get an after picture.
Yeah.
In a year or two if we go through it.
Yeah.
But I would like to fix it up.
Well, it's pretty rare, isn't it? They're pretty low production, I believe.
Yeah, I'm not sure how many. I know it was probably 20 years ago I was talking to my dad about it, and he brought it up, and he said, well, it's probably worth what you paid for it. And my cousin was there, and he just laughed, and he told us how many they made. And I don't remember what he said, but it was definitely worth a lot more than the $4,000 that I paid for it.
Right.
Last week I did see, there was on Steffes auction, there was a G750 and a G850. They looked nice. They'd been all repainted. And I think on the auction bill, it said there were less than 200 of both of those produced.
Okay.
So I think it's less than 200 of these tractors that actually came out of the factory in the yellow color.
Right. Do you know what year it is?
I was thinking it was a 71.
Okay.
But then I think somebody else that knows more about tractors than me thought it must have been a 72.
Okay.
So I'm not real sure.
Yeah, because by the mid 70s, it was, they were just white at that point.
Yeah. Yeah.
I forget. 2255 must have been the last Oliver.
Might have been. Yeah.
And that was like maybe 76 or.
When it was produced, probably. Yeah, I'll bet it was. Yeah. Yeah, that might have been about the last of it.
Somewhere in that time, but yeah, there's some interesting overlap.
Yeah.
In there.
Yep. And I should remember that, but it was a long time ago. But
yeah.
Yeah, but my dad had a 2255, and I really like that tractor.
Yeah. They're they just look cool too.
Yeah. Yep.
And
then the whites, I'm not sure if they introduced them all at the same time. I know the 2105 was pretty popular for middle-sized tractor.
Yep, because that was like a 1955, right?
Yeah. Yep. It was. It was different. It wasn't the same
Yeah.
tractor.
But it was that same
Redesigned,
size.
but the same size. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yep. And I think those, yeah, because once you got to the 2135 was a big tractor at the time, and then that like the 2150, they were big tractors.
Yep. I believe the 2150s were produced earlier. I think they made the 2135 and 2155. And they were the same engine, just turned up different.
Okay.
Yep. And then the 2180 was a cat engine. Yep.
Yep. So that 2135 must have been a Hercules.
Yep. I bet it was. Yeah.
But yeah, then the V8 cat was the same as the 2255.
Yeah. Yep. They both had V8 cats.
Yep. Which one was it, a 3150 cat or something? Then they went to the 3208 or something, but they were both V8. Same.
Yep. Yeah.
And then they kept that 2180 right up until they went to the Cummins powered ones.
I bet they did. Yeah.
So you never had one of those Cummins powered.
We rented one summer. I think it was a 140.
Okay.
That was a really nice tractor too. But
yeah,
we rented that for a year or two, and then we ended up going to the Case IH on a lease program for 3 years, and then went to the 8100.
Okay. Yeah. Was that one a front wheel assist then?
The
white?
Yeah, I believe it was. Yep.
Okay.
Yep. We rented it in the summer. I don't think we pulled a planter with it. I know we used it side dressing and cultivating.
Yep. Yeah, they were. I kind of like them them workhorses they call them.
Yeah. Yep. I think they were very nice tractors, but I never had one. So.
Yeah. Which Case IH was, well, especially with those Magnums, they were aggressive at moving them tractors.
Yep.
Yeah,
and that's what we had for the 3 years.
Okay. Yeah. Did you like that Magnum?
I did. Yeah. Yep. But then I think when I got in the 8100, I liked that better. And we had the dealership right close, and was friends with the guy that owned the dealership. So.
Yeah. Yep. Do you got a favorite tractor throughout all of them?
If I had to pick one, it probably would be the 8100.
Okay.
But I know when my dad first got in 1955, I really liked that tractor too.
Yep.
So, and that's probably the reason why I bought this, because it's the same as the 1655.
Right.
But yeah, that was a huge upgrade going to that 1955. So it'd be hard to say which one was my favorite upgrade, going to that or the 8100.
Yeah. All right. Well, thanks a lot, Nate.
Yeah, thank you.